Hey, what's up, guys? Jeremy here from school.com/financial coaching. So if you've been watching my videos, then you are up to date with my financial freedom roadmap. 6 different levels that operate sequentially, build upon one another, that I would recommend to anyone to lean into and identify where to focus on to accelerate your path to financial freedom. And not only accelerate your path, but also maximize your experience of it, because not all pyramids are the same size. Okay. And that's what I want to talk about in this video, actually, is trying to highlight the ever expanding nature that you can experience in your journey of financial freedom. And ultimately, the point of this video is just to highlight that the wider the base and the stronger the base and each supporting level on top of it, the higher the pinnacle can become. And obviously that's true from a literal physical pyramid, right? If you have a super tiny base level, then your ability to build something great on top of that is going to be severely limited. In level 1, we call it freedom from finances. And that's a financial reality of frugality and getting your lifestyle to a place of simplicity so that you're not bound to a hamster wheel of financial output and demand. And it's also emotional and spiritual and mental freedom from kind of the ruling voices in your culture and your family and your trauma and the things that have shaped your view of money and self in the world that are really limiting you more so than actually setting you free. And so let me just kind of give a few examples of how this pyramid can work, I guess, how you can lean into it. And for most of us, the goal of financial freedom might have preceded this freedom from base level. You might have just had some financial ambition, or maybe finances were a pain point for you growing up. And so you just set out, it's like, I'm going to go make a lot of money. I want to be financially free. Or maybe you just hate your job. You don't like working. So you're like, hey, I'm going to go be financially free. And so you start out on this path. And when you pursue financial abundance without giving any attention to freedom from and building level by level, the best you can do is whatever hand you were dealt. For me, I was dealt a hand that was basically like Dave Ramsey disciple kid. Like that's what I grew up in, which is certainly better than a lot of alternatives as far as views of money go. But if I, for whatever reason, felt compelled to pursue financial freedom, to pursue financial abundance in adulthood without giving any attention to freedom from, I'm going to be limited by the experiences of a Dave Ramsey disciple. So what does that mean? It means basically lean into frugality and contentment indefinitely, work a job and maybe work a second job and work a long time, like not just hours per week, but decades, And if you have a really healthy career, you do a great job, you keep your spending to a minimum, then with the money that you're, compounding or that you have in surplus, here's what to do. Put it in 401ks, put it in Roth IRAs, and then just invest them across super broad index funds and mutual funds. And hey, when you're 65, you can have a couple $1,000,000 and you can retire without needing to rely on your kids to financially support you. I mean, that's pretty much the roadmap if you're a Ramsey disciple. And if you have a desire to acquire more wealth than what that path allows for, all you can really do without getting a wider base is to get a stronger base. And so there's the width and the strength of the supporting levels are what enable a higher and greater peak of financial freedom. For most of us, if we came from a particularly dysfunctional financial worldview, your chances of any semblance of apex freedom are pretty low because there's just not a lot of support. If you're just going after money to spite someone that said you could never do it, you could amass a good amount of money, but your experience of that money probably will not be very freeing for you emotionally. And if it's not freeing, it's probably combustible. It's at risk of being lost, of self-sabotage, etc. But the strength of what you know, for my example with the Ramsey situation, would be, okay, get my spending even cheaper, like go even more frugal. And as far as work even more hours, work another job, maybe get into another career, lean into what's the highest wage I can get, and then the lowest expenses, and then here's the max I could possibly be putting away per month. And then I'm going to work even longer in my life, and then maybe I could be at 10 million or whatever the number is. If I strengthen those principles, it increases the potential pinnacle or climax of the financial freedom that I can experience. And thankfully, what the hand I was dealt, there's at least a path for like something like financial freedom. But without expanding the width, it's a very narrow path and not really that freeing for me personally, for a couple reasons. But I'm not going to dive into all of it. The point of that was just illustrating you can just play the hand that you're dealt, and you can still grow the strength of those things. Or even if it's dysfunctional, for example, and you just want to prove to someone that said you can't do it that you can. The way to grow in that strength is kind of a tactic a lot of athletes might use, the hyper-competitive people, where you just create haters, basically. You create doubters. You magnify the pain of the fuel that's leading to your whole life that you're building, right? It's built on proving others wrong. And so the more people that you can convince yourself don't believe in you, and the louder you can let their voices become, the more fuel you're going to put into that engine. Now, again, I don't think that's a very stable pyramid, but that could be one way to increase the height of your pyramid. Is not just there's a sequential reality of growing the pyramid, but there's also a strengthening that you could then build a larger pyramid just by strengthening the underlying levels. So in this dysfunction example of I'm trying to prove people wrong, maybe you just used to only want to prove this one elementary school teacher wrong that said you could never go to college or something like that, or you could never be a doctor, so then you become a doctor. And so at level 1, you kind of bypassed that level, right? Because you just took the hand you were dealt. You didn't try to change the hand. So you have a weak and narrow level 1. But then as it relates to being a student of the game, a master of yourself, you're just thinking from that lens of, okay, I will go to college. I will be a doctor. So what do I need to do to make sure that I can do that? And then sharpen the axe. You're investing in related skills. You're trying to meet people in that industry. You're trying to read up as much as you can and then push the tempo. You're maybe taking on loans to get through that school, and you're really pushing yourself. You're working extra hours to get to, okay, now we're rainmakers. Like we're actually in this career and we're successful. We're putting money away. And then if I just do this for X amount of decades, then I can have a semblance of financial independence, financial freedom. that would be basically the best you can do with the hand you were dealt. But you could strengthen the pyramid by intensifying the voices of doubt. Now, I wouldn't recommend building a pyramid this way. I'm just using this as an illustration to just show you that this could work um, no matter what kind of spirits you're operating with. I used the Dave Ramsey example of working more hours and more frugal and more content and more mutual funds and and just like using career earnings as the primary driver as well as my personal frugality. And so I could just consume more and more of that content. I could talk to more people that do that. I could go to their live events. I could just feed on this as my source, my motivation. And I would probably end up with a higher level of wealth, a higher sense of financial freedom because I strengthened the supporting bricks. And you could do that with doubters, proving people wrong, etc. Strengthen those voices, magnify and intensify and multiply the breadth and intensity of people that are against you. So now you can say, I don't just want to be a doctor, I want to do this. And oh, if someone said I can't do that, someone said I can't do that. And you could build a whole life based on that. And you would increase your potential of financial freedom by strengthening those supporting levels. The other way to strengthen the pyramid and thereby re-engage in the levels of this pyramid is by width. So by strength, you can intensify. I'm going to be an even better doctor. I'm going to put even more time into more resources. I'm going to just double down every level using what I know. Or I'm going to expand what I know. So for me, for example, like I realized that I don't want to work in traditional corporate jobs. And there's several factors behind that. But I realized I want to be an entrepreneur. And so that was expansive for me because now I'm stepping outside of what I felt was the hand I was dealt. And as far as investments go, I thought, I don't want to just have my money in random funds. Like, I want to personally direct the allocation of every dollar. I want to know the companies specifically inside and out as best as I can. And I don't want to just settle for a 15 or 12 or 9 or 18% return. Like, I want to see, like, what can I do if I really learn this? That opened something up that then opens something up on each of the following levels, the ascending levels. As if who I am is Dave Ramsey disciple, everything's going to be built on that. But now, if it's actually, I'm getting free from some of this ideology, and now I kind of want to lean into more risky things. I want to try to start businesses. I want to almost de-emphasize frugality and focus on income generation. I want to take risk within my investments. And the freedom process is simply if you realize that you're not really who you thought that you were, and things that you used to lean into, you realize aren't actually serving you. In the example of trying to prove others wrong, you might realize, I don't want to be a doctor, right? Or you might realize, I used to maybe want to be a doctor, but now I don't because it's poisoned by my internalization of other people's negative vibes. You know what I mean? And so, man, what if I just looked at life with a clean slate? That is a intense exhale, just like oh, I'm in charge. I'm the boss of myself, right? And now you've really locked into freedom once you start pursuing financial freedom while personally getting free, right? You can pursue financial freedom without that level 1, and you can see how it's so narrow, it's so limited, but you could still foresee a path where you achieve financial performance. But even that financial performance might not feel very freeing. And now we're expanding the width, and we're saying, hey, if we can get free from this has to be the way, now I have a clean slate. And if I'm going to be an investor, well, now what it means to be a student of the game is way different. When I was just a Ramsey disciple, student of the game meant, how do I select the best mutual fund? Do I roll into a Roth or do I do a traditional, right? Do I do this career or that career? When I'm an investor and entrepreneur, it's like, man, like how do I analyze the value of a company? That's something you would never waste your time on in this narrow pyramid. But if you're actually free to be an investor or free to be an entrepreneur, all of a sudden the amount that you would learn and then the relationships you would build, the things you would invest your time in. I just spent so much time building investment tracking spreadsheets and ways for me to dissect companies that I would have never done without the freedom from. Similar with entrepreneurship. Like I used to think I'm basically just supposed to do corporate America, like get a good, good grades in high school, go to a good college, good grades in college, get a good job, do a good job, get better jobs. Then one day you retire. Like that's the hand that I was dealt. Honestly, not a bad hand, right? But for me, it would have been a horrible hand because I don't thrive in that environment. I don't want to do that. And so I'm just thankful that I got free. But the entrepreneurship experience, it's a way different pool of what am I investing in? Like how am I allocating my resources of time, relationships, and money? And then how am I pushing the tempo on those things? And then how am I experiencing breakthrough in those things? In the first example of corporate America, I'm just doing a good job, working overtime, playing corporate politics, trying to get the next promotion, maybe trading jobs, maybe moving cities a couple times, rising the ranks. For me, that wouldn't have felt as free. For some of y'all, it would probably be exactly what you want to do. But way different than the path of entrepreneurship. And then it just so happens that the path of entrepreneurship has a way higher earning potential, of course, than simply operating as an employee. But you could totally have the reverse impact where you think you have to be an entrepreneur because your dad was and his dad was, and they just want you to take on the family business. And you're like, I just want to be a teacher. And I'm telling you, your financial freedom pyramid is going to be the strongest. It's going to be the tallest, the wider and the stronger that you can make each of these levels. That you can't get too free inside yourself. You can't be too much of a student of the game and a master of yourself. You can't sharpen the axe too much. You can't push the tempo too much. You can't be a rainmaker too much. Whatever. And apex freedom is defined by your experience of freedom and financial abundance, which is relative to you. But the financial abundance without the freedom, it's not really freedom. And the last point I'm trying to emphasize, okay, so you're expanding width. You're strengthening. So, and that can happen simultaneously as you working on other levels. But I guess the last point I wanted to emphasize is it can certainly cycle through. And maybe that's already intuitive based on how much I've already communicated here. But you could have a moment where, I don't want to be a Dave Ramsey disciple. I want to be an active investor and entrepreneur, take on more risk, etc. Another one for me was I want to live generously now. And I felt like as a Dave Ramsey disciple, I'm supposed to minimize my giving to just 10% and then focus on building my financial assets. And then one day I can give like no one else. But right now I can't. And I'm like, man, I don't want to wait 40 years to start giving. Like, I want to give ridiculously now, scaled to what I have. Obviously, it's not going to be as much in terms of dollars, but it might be more meaningful. Who knows? And I'm going to be more attuned to needs now than I would be if I was already incredibly financially wealthy. So I want to be more generous. I want to be more active of an investor. I want to be more risky of a career and entrepreneur. And so I'm departing, right? I'm okay, freedom from. And then, right, there's new skills, new relationships, etc. What I'm trying to say in this last point is there are still more freedom froms that I might not know yet. And so, okay, now I'm building this pyramid based on my newfound strength and width of some supporting level. An example I gave on my coaching call was like debt, for example. As a Dave Ramsey disciple, you would never touch debt. But if you, in student of the game, realize like, oh, debt could actually be an important accelerator in your financial journey. It's not for everyone, not something you should do blindly, but it can accelerate your financial freedom. All of a sudden, it's like, well, that's expansive, and it builds the potential for a higher pyramid. But for me, for example, just recently, I mean, within the past few weeks and months, I've been really diving into a theme that I think has been in my life of codependency. And 10 years ago, I didn't know that that would be something in the surface or under the surface, right? I wasn't aware that I might be latching my sense of self-worth to what other people think of me. But if I can get free from that governing spirit of codependency, it's expansive for my personal freedom, for my level one, my freedom from, but it also supports a greater pyramid. I'll give you one example of this. With codependency, let's say it manifested in my relationship with my wife. And so for a long portion of our marriage, I felt like falsely disempowered and she was falsely empowered. I'm going to do whatever she wants me to do. And I'm going to willingly engage in the relationship that way. And my wife happens to be very, like a naturally dependent personality, very like just wants to be there, very loyal, a great friend. I call her my together girl. So she wants to do everything together. So if I am falsely disempowered in codependency to her, that means I'm going to just be there as much as possible. Like if she's home, I want to be home. Not necessarily I want to be, but I'm going to be. And what I want doesn't even matter because I'm going to fixate myself on my projections of her level of joy and fulfillment in my relationship with her, in her relationship with me, really. So what does that mean? If I break off codependency, if I get free from codependency, that means now I'm allowed to disappoint her. I'm allowed to do things that I want to do, etc. If one of the things that I was not able to explore, not able to do was, man, I really want to try working 6 days a week instead of 5. Or, man, I really want to work these 2 evenings a week and I wasn't before. Or I want to start doing this hobby that maybe you disapproved of before, or whatever it is. These are all of a sudden incredibly consequential, not just from a personal freedom perspective, but also from a financial opportunity perspective. When you are fully free, the freer that you are in terms of width, the greater your pyramid can be, and it doesn't ever stop. Probably. I mean, maybe I reach a point where I'm like, wow, I actually check level 1 freedom from is done. I'm 100% free from any other type of influence that would somehow, shrink or narrow my focus or detach me in some way from my true self. I don't think, though, that you can ever get there because life is ongoing. So even if you got there in a moment, something's going to happen in the next 6 months that somehow subconsciously, without active, like mental farming, without like tilling the soil, it's going to start lodging some things under the surface that will affect you in suboptimal ways. Not because the ways are suboptimal, but just because they're you. They're like intrinsically outside influences that are not personally adopted by you, but actually are subconsciously like enforcing their will upon you. Um, so it cycles through. You're never done. I think intuitively, naturally, it makes the most sense to let me start with level 1 and try to get as free from other things as I can, and try to get my frugality right as lean as I can, and then let me just do the best I can, right? And I can pause before I rush into level 2. Like, is there anything else, like, or are there other kind of, I don't know, podcasts I could listen to, or is there an event I could go to, or are there people I could spend time with to just get this base as wide as possible, but also as strong as possible. For me with entrepreneurship, okay, it was expansive. Or with codependency, like, oh, okay, I can have agency. I don't have to like only work 40 hours a week. If I really want to work 50, I can. But there's a strengthening there of like, but am I really an entrepreneur? Like, am I just trying it out, or like, is this intrinsically through and through, like, this is who I am? Am I really free from codependency, or am I just waiting to see if I have approval from Megan on if I can do this or that, right? So there's a strengthening and an expanding. You invest in level 1 to the best of your ability, and then you grow into level 2 based on the implications of the freedoms that you experience and achieve in level 1. And then you do the same in level 2. You learn yourself as well as you can. You learn the game of money as well as you can. But of course, inevitably, and so then in level 3, in level 4, etc., but inevitably there will be life events or moments that are expansive or strengthening in some of the supporting levels. And it doesn't mean you're going backwards. It just means you're building a bigger, stronger, greater pyramid, and then you have an appetite for something with a higher ceiling than the path you are currently on. And so if for some reason life is tugging you back into level 3 when you thought you were at level 4, or tugging you into level 1 when you thought you were at level 5, or whatever, I'd say follow that wind and dive into it, because it's only going to be supportive for you in the long run in terms of your experience of freedom, and in the height, the pinnacle of just how epically financially free are you. And you want your financial freedom to be reflective of your internal freedom and your external abilities that you've developed. You don't just want to, how do I get money, and usurp that whole process. This was certainly longer winded than I wanted it to be, but I wanted to give some guidance on just how do you process the levels of financial freedom, and just help you envision that it's hopefully not sporadic. You're not always all over the place all the time, right? You're focusing somewhere and you really are growing things. But life certainly can draw you into a level that was uh, that was you thought you were already done with, but now you have an opportunity to lean into to a greater degree. And so even for me with frugality, I'm kind of like going back and really enjoying the principles of frugality. And for the past few years, I just haven't, like, it just hasn't been important to me. And I realized, like, I feel more free when I lean into frugality, and part of it's just probably my personality, my roots, etc. But regardless, it's not like it somehow detaches me from what I've built thus far, or now I'm starting over. It's just, no, you're building, you're expanding, and you've already built what you've built, and now you're going to build more. And it's kind of like if your pyramid was Legos, it's probably not just like 1 and then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 1, 2, 3. Sorry, I'm looking at myself do this. It's not just like always that orderly, but I'd say start with 1 as much as you can, 2 as much as you can, 3, but like it's probably like you're getting some 4, and then 1 is kind of, and that's like it's looking a little bit wonky at times. It's not always such a perfect shape, right? But it's really being built. You're really experiencing it. And so I just want to encourage you. You're doing great. And if you need guidance, if you feel a little confused, if you feel like this is too much and you don't know where to start, and whew, hey, hop on some coaching calls. Would love to walk you through it at school.com/financial coaching. All right, that's all I got for y'all today. I will talk to you soon.